This is the fourth lecture in our series on Algebra 1, Algebraic Foundations, which is Unit 1. Today we're going to discuss exponents. And exponents comes from the word power. When we're finding powers of things. And a power is an expression written with a base and an exponent. And it looks like this: a to the b. A to the b. And for right now, we're going to assume that a is just a whole number. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or b is just a whole number. A can be anything: positive, negative, decimal, and so forth. And if we write this out, we say that a is called the base, and b is called the exponent. And what this means is we're going to, similar to multiplication and addition, multiplication is repeated addition. Exponents and powers are repeated multiplication. So what this means is we're going to multiply a by itself b times. A by itself b times. So if I say, what is 3 to the 4th? 3 to the 4th is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 4 times. 4 to the 6th is 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. And so on. Now there are some geometric shortcuts to this. Instead of saying 3 to the 2nd power, we say something else. So if I have a side times a side, this is s to the 2nd power. And geometrically, it looks like a square. And it's how you calculate the area of a square, if you remember this from the first review lecture when we talked about geometry. A side times a side is s to the 2nd power, but we read this as s squared. Or we could say 3 squared is 9. 12 squared is 144. 12 times 12 is 144. Now, similarly, there's one for cube, because cube can be represented geometrically as well. So let me draw a cube. Your lecturer is not Picasso, so please bear with these crude drawings here. So if I want to know how many cubes are in this cube, if there's s sides going this way, s sides going up, and s sides deep, I multiply s times s times s and get s cubed. So if something is cubed, it's multiplied by itself 3 times. So if s was 4, 4 cubed is 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. So there would be 64 cubes inside this, unit cubes inside this big cube here. In other words, 64 1 by 1 by 1 cubes. I'm not going to do 12. What about 7 cubed? Is 7 times 7 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49, and 49 times 7 is 343. Okay, so let's look at some examples of calculating exponents, especially with the negative numbers, because there is a difference between the two. So let's find -2 cubed, and then let's find the opposite of 2 cubed. Notice I said those differently as I wrote them down. This is -2 cubed. Everything in these parentheses is getting cubed. So it's -2 times -2 times -2. Okay, so let's find the sign first. Same sign as positive. So if we multiply these two together, we'll get positive. And then we'll have a positive number times a negative. So the result is negative. And then we'll have 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. But this one is calculated differently. This is the opposite of 2 cubed. Well, we already know what 2 cubed is. 2 cubed is 8, and it's the opposite. So if negative 2 cubed is 8, what's negative 2 to the 4th? Okay. Well, first we find 2 to the 4th. That's 8 times 2, which is 16. And then we change the sign. That is not the same as this. Negative 2 to the 4th. Here, we're taking negative 2 and multiplying by itself 4 times. And we already know 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. But what's the sign? A negative times a negative is a positive times a negative is a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. This one is positive 16, and this one is negative 16. You really need to be careful with these negatives when the sign is even, because there is a difference between the two of those. So let's find some more. What about negative 5 cubed? What is negative 5 cubed? Well, first find this. So a good rule of thumb here, and I'll put the rule of thumb here. If we're finding a negative like this, if it's an even power, it's positive. If it's a negative power, it's negative. Or odd power, I'm sorry, odd power. Odd power. So we have an odd power, so the result is going to be negative. 5 times 5 is 25, and 25 times 5 is 125. So we're negative 5 cubed is 125. In some cases, you may be asked to express a number as a power given a specific base. For example, let's say we have 49. I want to express 49 as a power of 7. So what this is asking is 7 to the what is 49? Well, we know that 7 squared is 49 because 7 times 7 is 49. So this would be 2. What about negative 100 or 1,000? Let's do negative 1,000 as a power of negative 10. So this is going to be negative 10. Negative 10 to what power is negative 1,000? Well, 10 times 10 is 100. And 100 times 10 is 1,000. So we did 10 times 10 times 10. That'd be 10 cubed. Okay, I'm going to do an application before I conclude here. And we say things grow exponentially. This is an exponential growth. A lot of things grow exponentially. Your money in the bank account grows exponentially. Bacteria grow exponentially. Things grow exponentially. People grow exponentially. The exponent, when it comes to people, is not necessarily one that's easy to think about because it's usually a decimal, but it can be modeled to grow exponentially. A bacteria splits in half A bacteria splits in half every hour. That means one bacteria becomes two bacteria every hour. How many bacteria will there be after? How many bacteria will there be after 8 hours? Okay, so 1 hour is 2 to the 1. 2 hours is 2 to the 2. 8 hours would be 2 to the 8. What is 2 to the 8? It's 2 times 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 2. Okay, so let's see if we can break up some of these 2's a little bit better. It's usually, maybe we could look at these here, because this would be this number times this number. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. If this one is 16, this one must be 16 too. So what we're looking for is 16 times 16. 16 times 6 is 96. And we add those up and we get 256. So we can say after 8 hours, there will be 256 bacteria. Now that's assuming, of course, that no bacteria die. And on most cases, they say, all right, most bacteria aren't going to die. So the things to remember here, a to the b is a times a times a times a, dot, 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 dot. A times a times a times a to b times. A is called the base, and b is called the exponent. The base and the exponent. If we have negative 5 squared, this is the opposite of 5 squared, which is negative 25, because order of operations say do exponents first. So 5 squared is 25, and then the sign just tacks on. But negative 5 squared is negative 5 times negative 5, which is positive 25. Okay, that's going to conclude the lecture. In the next lecture, lesson 5, we are going to discuss square roots. I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, happy studying.